Hello. So I am going to start a stream about using Unreal Engine to create a remake, I suppose, of an old game. Um, the old game is one that I used to play when I was a child, more or less. It will be familiar to some, I expect, and we're going to try and create it as is, or as it was originally um, released on the PC or um, other platforms, really. And we will use the original assets to help with that. And we will try and keep the creation of this game as consistent with the original as possible. And as I say, we're going to use Unreal Engine. It's a 2D game, as was most back then, but Unreal Engine seems like it's basically just a good engine to use. It's got a lot of features that will be easy to help with this project. I have not used Unreal Engine a great deal, so a key aspect of this is learning Unreal Engine and being able to produce this game using that engine. Another advantage is that by creating a game that I am familiar with for the most part, it should help with the process and I can focus on the Unreal Engine side of things opposed to the game side of things. So the game that we're going to make is called Mega-lo-Mania, originally by ImageWorks or Sensible Soccer. Here is a text version of the manual that we will undoubtedly use throughout the process, and we can run it in DOSBox. So we have it here. This is just basically the first level, just with actually no progress, just to kind of show the game running and kind of show the various aspects. And we'll obviously be using the game to help port it across to Unreal Engine effectively. We got the game from Abandonware, so you can pretty much just download it. Obviously there's a number of information about it, and a download link to various versions of it. You can get the Windows DOS version, I think the Amiga version's on there as well, and various others. As I say, using DOSBox to run it, again, that can be downloaded from dosbox.com. Anybody that's tried to run older games or games from GOG or even certain games on Steam will have, whether they known it or not, been using DOSBox to do that. And as I say, we're going to use the original assets, so we don't have to worry about graphics or images and things like that. To help with that, we'll use GIMP where we need to, particularly for extracting those assets, which we'll start with soon to kind of get that going. So we're going to create a new project in Unreal Engine, and we're going to just call it now. As I say, I'm not familiar with Unreal Engine. I'm using this as a learning experience. I've done some basic stuff with it, and a lot of it I'll be learning as I go. So I'll try and include within this stream the use of it. So the streams will include the actual development of the game, but any kind of research or critical prototyping that I have to do to be able to do the stream, I'll obviously do offline, unless it becomes interesting or unless there's particularly interest in those things. But we're going to have a blank project, so hopefully with the least amount of created content. It's going to be a 2D game, so we're going to go with scalable 3D or 2D option, and we'll definitely go with no starter content. We've just simply called it Mega-lo-Mania. We'll create that project. Takes a few seconds. So the premise of Mega-lo-Mania is it's kind of a strategy game. You go through multiple islands with multiple epochs. Each epoch, except for the last, has 3 islands, and there's 10 epochs. So there are 28 levels, I believe, based on that. And you start off with a certain amount of people. Every epoch you get some more people, and the people you don't use from the previous epoch you you carry forward. So for the first kind of introduction to this project, I'm going to focus on just trying to get the little people that are within the game and their animation frames and things like that kind of just on the screen, just to kind of, I suppose, start with something that's interesting and visually appealing, kind of a nice quick start on that. So to show what that is, we'll go into a new game on the original, and we will then drop some people down. So there's various different weapons, research that you can do within the game, and you basically create an army with those and use those men to defeat the enemy players. So these little animated people walking around, they're kind of the unarmed, unskilled people, but we're going to try and get one, at least, little person walking around in Unreal Engine. So I'll just leave that running in the background. So when you create a new project on Unreal Engine, you do end up with a lot of content in your level. So this is the first level of our game. We know that we're not going to need any of these things. Perhaps the camera should be somewhere there, and things like that. But we'll just ignore them for now. Try and work around them. Again, because I'm not necessarily familiar, I don't want to necessarily delete something that prevents anything working, and perhaps the little people can walk on the floor, even if they're in 2D. So we use GIMP, again, freely available image editor, to open the content files, and now the images within the game are separated into 3 sprite maps, I suppose. Certain of them, like the armies, which is where we're going to focus, is a very big sprite map. There's lots of different types of units or people in different costumes, therefore equipped with different things, and all the other different bits and graphics and pieces that are all put together to make this game. Additionally, there are islands, the little graphics that are used, which we saw previously when you're selecting a level. I don't know if any of them are repeated or if they're all unique, but we'll get to that in a later episode. And finally, for images, there's the buildings. So there's all of the buildings through all of the different epochs. You get a different kind of style of building, so there are different styles. Now, to open these particular files, because they're LBM files within the content of the download, I've had to install a plugin for GIMP, which is the IFF plugin. Again, easily installed, easily available, freely available, and that's what we've needed to download to be able to open these images. Now obviously Unreal Engine is not going to be able to open those images, or at least I don't believe it can. I guess we can for the sake of argument see if it can. It doesn't look like it can. I'd have been surprised if it could. So we'll just it's not a recognized file, so that's fine. So that's why we needed GIMP, so we can resave or export these images, and we'll export it as a PNG. So we're resaving the armies one, and we'll just drop it onto the desktop. We'll call it PNG instead. We want to save the background color because it's the green, and the green we'll use to be able to pick out all the sprites. I believe that's fine. I think we want to lower perhaps the compression ratio, just because the pixels are important with trying to pick out that, so maybe we'll turn the compression off entirely. I think that's fine. I might have to redo that if I've done it all wrong, but we'll see how we go. So drop back down to the desktop. So little people are still going. So now we've got armies PNG that we can drop into the engine. Now we've got the image in Unreal, we need to create sprites from it. So we can do sprite actions and extract sprites. And we tell it the outline color picker is that green. And we just want to automatically pick them out because there's a lot of different sprites. They're all completely randomly placed. Well, so far as we care at this point. Actually, the outline color and the background color. The background and the outline we'll do is the same color. I think that would be fine. Let's see what that does. I think that has created us one sprite. One sprite with all the images. That did not work. Let's try again. So I haven't done it with this image before. Maybe we'll just work on the background color this time instead of the outline color, see if that works any better. No, it still seems to get one sprite. I mean, maybe it's because the image is a bit blurry. It does seem to have lost some of its quality. If we look here, the pixels are fairly clear cut, so perhaps we should export it again. We'll just replace it, and this time we'll keep that high. See if that exports it in a better quality, so we'll just remove the one we've already imported. Some space. Drop that one back in. Let's see if that's. So it still gets a bit blurry, but perhaps that's just the. No, there's still kind of awkward quality around there. Okay, so maybe a PNG isn't a particularly good choice. Particularly think that a PNG is a good choice either, but if it keeps the quality of the image. I still feel that we're losing stuff. If we navigate to the jet planes here and here, and we're zoomed in GIMP, it's crisp and clear, and yet when we zoom in here it's not, and that may just be a product of zooming in on Unreal and just the way it loses the quality as it zooms in. But it may be the fact that we've lost some. I guess we could check that by opening in a different program, see if it looks any better here. Yeah, I still think we're getting a bit of fuzz, but create sprites just creates one. Definitely want to extract the sprites. We just need to make sure that it picks the right color. Doesn't seem to be any way to preview what it's going to do. Okay, let's try. Okay, that's gone rid of the background. Don't know if that's better or worse, but we'll go with that. Perhaps it will be able to extract the sprites better now. Nope. What was that? Maybe we don't want to do anything in that area. This is not a particularly good start. I thought this would be easy. I don't actually want to change the viewport tint in any way, really. It is a fresh project, yes. It's not a very successful project so far. I don't know. I do not know how to achieve what I wanted already. And the tutorial videos and other people doing similar things that I watched earlier today, they just simply extracted the sprites from the image and it worked. Yet does not seem to be able to extract the sprites in my case. And I don't really understand why. No, it might simply be that every... No, because even the keyframes of, say, the characters are all within a grid, so we could attempt to import based on a grid, which isn't going to work for everything, but it might work for some. If we go back to GIMP, we can use GIMP to make sure we get the dimensions of the grid correct. So we're saying that it could be probably about 16 by 16 if we go from there to there. Yeah, so it's 16 by 16 is the grid size. By 16. So I mean that does definitely cover well, it covers all the key parts. It doesn't look too bad actually, everything seems to fit. I mean we obviously we lose with the spaceship, but I guess we could re-extract the sprites with a different grid size for various things, like the airplanes and the other decal for those. But this will give us the people, so we're going to go with that. That's going to give us all the sprites for the individual characters, and we can take that. Yeah, that's yeah. Sorry, I'm a bit delayed with the chat, but yes, it did seem like the areas where it went outside of the grid probably really confused it. But we have made at least some progress. We have all of the bits for the individual characters. We can sort out the images for the ones that don't fit when we actually get to them. So obviously we know we don't need the airplanes like that. We can re-extract it with a different grid. So I think that will work. Okay, so we need all of the, so I don't know from this this sprite map where the character that doesn't have a weapon is. If we go back to the original game, the little dudes with the short hair appear not to be obvious in this set, but that doesn't matter. We just want to get one of them working, so we're just going to use the guy with the long hair, which is this one. So I think from this we create a flip book, and we'll call that Stone Man. Okay, so we can see there's a little bit of bleed over from some of the pixels from some of the other tiles. 16 by 16 perhaps wasn't correct, but again we're just gonna stick with it. And again, it's made it all soft and blurry. I'm not quite sure how we can enforce the pixel nature of this. It seems to be resizing stuff, but perhaps we can do that kind of for individual frames. I guess it says the source dimension is 16 by 16 and it makes it bigger. But again, we'll go with it for now. So we have this little man. He's walking in all the different directions. So again, animation, not something I've done before. We do know we need to see if we can make these frames a little bit slower. Okay, let's just slow down the frames per second to 5, maybe 8. So we have all the different directions in one place. I think I'm going to need to do a bit more research on sorting out this animation, whether they should be 4 individual animations for each of the different directions, whether it's one animation but with different frames or whatnot. But we do, so if we start that one and that one, so they're all good, and then we go back. So I have frame there. That's the back 4. So we'll have another frame there. And then 1, 2, 3, 4. And we'll have another one after that. So we've separated all of the changes of direction with some keyframes. Hopefully that means we can use parts of this animation to move them around. Put our little man in. Yep, we can put our little man in. So we get the right angle on him. So yeah, we've got that, definitely that kind of bleed over from the images, but we'll definitely be able to clean that up after the fact. Should be flying around somewhere. So that's not too bad. Certainly a reasonable start. So when we actually get to trying to sort out the camera, text regroup to 2D pixels. Okay, text regroup to 2D pixels. Would that be on each of the sprites or the source texture? I assume texture would be in the text regroup. Let's see what we can do. I don't actually know where that option would be. So we'll just dig around. Text regroup. Ah, here we go. 2D pixels. Save that. Does that automatically? Yes. Excellent. Thank you. That changing the texture fixed the picture and fixed the so yeah, fixed the sprites, which then fixed the animation. So in one manner he looks worse because now it's just giant pixels, but he looks right. So from a distance, if we're not right up in his face, it looks quite good. Let's just put him on the ground. Yeah, that's quite cool. Yeah, it fixed the bleed as well, didn't it? It's kind of solved all the problems just by doing it. No, that's great. As I said to start with, I'm not familiar with Unreal Engine, everything that it can do. I'm confident enough that I can learn what needs to be done as I go along, but obviously help like that saves me a whole bunch of Googling. So that's really good, thank you. So we do have this stone man, and he is just walking around, really. So now we have to create a blueprint for him, I think, so that we can give him some control. And I think, yes, to do that, if I understand correctly, we need an actor. So we need to create where's the blueprint class? A blueprint class, which is an actor. So we'll change that to the space in there. There we go. And we'll give our Stone Man blueprint our Stone Man animation. So now we'll take off the flipboard actor and we'll put in our actual main person. Oh, there's the awkward ball, which we can hide somehow. There we go, visible. So if we save and compile that, nope, the awkward ball is still there. seem to say the hidden in game. That might be the one we want. Still end up with the awkward ball. Really sure where the awkward ball comes from. Class defaults, editor blue. Okay, class defaults. I know that there is class defaults. I always forget where they are. Go. Okay, thank you. Edit billable style. Scale. I'll just put it down to 0. Ah, yes, thank you. So far, I've learnt 2 things from you. Very helpful, thank you. Excellent, so we've now got a little man without the ball. So at the moment he is just randomly walking around, and we're going to have to try and give him some logic on whether he should be going in any of the given directions, and hopefully tie that to certain keyframes within his movement. Do we have anything in the animation? Frame rate, length, set position in frames, okay. Get the windows organised. Unfortunately, I have to try and squeeze this onto a single monitor. Does that stop him moving around? Yes. Could do with going back to the main camera. So it always puts the player in the same place, so we're just trying move our little man to in front of the default camera location. We'll deal with the actual cameras and where they should go a bit later on. But for now we'll just try and get our little person on screen by default. Where is he gone? He's not even here. Maybe we'll need to put down our own camera to get that working. So it says the player starts about that direction, yeah, so we probably were actually about right. We just spin him around. That one. Degrees. Okay, good. So now we've at least got him on screen. Could do with a bit closer to the camera. There we go. And he is stood still. which is a start. It's not stood still in the editor, but one problem at a time. So we know that we can go to particular frames, so I think that if we go to frame 4, that should be a different direction. Yeah, frame 4 must be that empty keyframe that we have. Frame 5. Yeah, there we go. So 4 and all the others are the empty keyframes, so I'm not sure if they're going to help us at the moment or not, but we'll deal with that later. So we can just get a random number. And yeah, I think we'll take the empty keyframes out, because otherwise our animation has holes in it. And we know back to the animation, so we know we have 15 frames and therefore 15 maximum. And save. So every tick is picking a different frame. It looks a bit crazy. I think it's going to be a while before there's anything spectacular about what's produced here. I will need to do some research on how to properly handle the flipbook animation frames, how to get this to work how I'm actually intending. But for now, we know that it's going to come in, pick a random frame. That's not so great. So we know we want it to pick a random frame, I don't know, less often. Delta's not going to help us. So I've done this type of animation handling in HTML and Canvas, and that wasn't so difficult. But trying to figure out, or I guess just simply not knowing what components to use, it makes this difficult. Definitely when you know what you want to do, you just don't know how to draw it. So that'll work. When the game starts, we want to pick a frame. Well, I guess actually no, we want to pick a direction, don't we? That's how we're doing it. We're just jumping straight in with the trying to solve a frame. Let's pick a direction. So a variable. Don't want to make it editable. We don't actually want to make it a boolean. We want to make it a vector. Do we want to make it a vector? A vector would work because we've got x, y, and z. So we'll stick with a vector. It covers all of the directions we need. begin play, set timer by event. Yeah, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Timers. Yeah, okay. Thank you. That's makes perfect sense. We'll keep the direction because I believe we'll need to know which way it's going to be able to change it. We could randomly pick a frame or a direction and then set the frame, but we'd need to be able to animate over those 3 frames. Yeah, I can't guarantee that anything that I come up with is going to be good or right or the best way to do it, but a lot of the early code is going to be like that when we're working on new projects, definitely when one is not so familiar with the engine. So likeliness is I can come back to it, or I will come back to it in the future and get a better idea. For now we are setting the 4 directions based on that, and then based on the direction we will set the frame. Yeah. Would the select then do what the switch is doing? Let's have a look. Select. Option 0, option 1. Okay. We'll go back to the options. Yes, okay. Make vector. Oh, vector 2D would probably make more sense as well in this context. But the select can only... Yeah. It appears though that we've only got 2 options. How would you get 4 directions? That's probably not useful anymore. Option pin. Thank you. I should have tried right click and on my own. Excellent. So messy as it may be, I'll just get it sorted. Probably don't need any of that anymore. Okay, that's great. That makes a lot more sense. It's kind of like the same as the select, sorry, same as the switch almost, but just the other way around, and makes a lot more sense. Makes it very clear what one's trying to achieve with that. Got plus x, plus y, minus y. That's good. So we don't need that one anymore. So now all we need to do is set the frame based on the direction. I guess that's the problem with using a vector 2D here, is how do we translate that vector 2D into an appropriate frame, given that we want a frame between 1 and, not 1 and 15, but 1 and something or other, given the keyframes, 1 and 4 obviously. Doesn't seem to be a great benefit actually trying to make that a vector 2D. Are we ever going to care? I guess if once we're actually moving the character, having a vector 2D is going to be more beneficial. Okay, we'll stick with it, because we can just say if it's greater than or less than. Break that. So we've got our 4 conditions. Fire an event. And we want to branch. See how this turns out. This is again probably the most inefficient way to do this. You can do it the really long way. It's one of those scenarios where you're writing some code, or in this case drawing a graph, and you're thinking it's got to be a better way. It's got to be a better way. It's greater than 0, less than 0, greater than 0, less than 0. So I just put some random numbers in here. So is it 4? So 4, 8, 12, and 0. Of frames 0, 4, 8, 12, and I don't even know if they line up to the right frames. What's gone wrong? Didn't like that. Oh yeah, target. Set the target into all of them. Hopefully with that, they'll face a different way. Okay, that's good. So we come in, he faces away. He may not be facing the right way, based on what we consider to be the direction, but he is at least facing a direction. Don't know what that is. That and the player start, that can go. Okay, that is at least something. But we've told it what frame to start at. Yeah, so we'd use the timer. But I mean, I guess we'll have to manage the whole change of frame based on the direction. Now we don't want, we could set that, yeah, we could set that value at these given points. Yeah, so we need to change what frame we're on every tick, obviously based on the delta in the future to smooth that out, but change the frame and then set the frame. So rather than literally setting the frame for all of these different ones, yeah, I think that the timer that you mentioned has been mentioned. Let's start with that. Timer. What did you call it? Set timer by event. Okay, that implies to me that we will change direction every 5 seconds. Let's make that a little less, every 3 seconds. At the moment we haven't changed anything else, so hopefully that will do. Oh, will do nothing. Does not like that. Do we need that? Yes, we need an event. On begin play, set timer event, looping, create event, switch frame. Okay. Not like that. Oh, it does like that. Okay, so we begin play, we call our event, starts here, we set the time by the event. Want to connect event, want to connect or turn off looping. Event dispatches are things that can call events, yes. What you say doesn't make perfect sense at the moment. Let's see if this makes actually any actually works. Seems a whole lot more random, so it's not doing what I expect. Okay. Yep. Event dispatcher is not an event. So when we event dispatcher is not an event. Add custom event. I don't need this. Okay, let's start with that. I don't need my frame event. You're saying use a custom event. Add custom event. Like that. I don't even know if it's going into this. And if it's not going into this, I'm not really sure why it's... Seems to just be... I haven't even tied that up, but... It seems to be randomly moving them around. I think that may be because the direction doesn't have a default, a useful default. So it's 0. Let's see if that makes any sense. Okay, good. That makes, at least that makes sense from down the bottom. Is that what we're after? Oh. Huh, okay. We're there. We haven't changed in direction. Obviously that's not quite what we want. We want it actually looping through the frames within the frames for that direction. I guess the thing that kind of threw me off was that by default it iterates through all the frames and it moves and it feels like you've got movement there. But when you actually take control over it, you're going to have to do every frame change, not just literally the direction. Now, this part of it changes direction. We don't want it to change direction as often as we want it to change frame. Keep it simple. So yes, let's go through both those. I would assume that actually this line can go straight here, and that one does not go anywhere. And that should still work, if I understand correctly. Because that's looping, it should go again, yes. Okay, excellent. So I was just resetting the timer every 3 seconds. Not very smart. So we do need to know what frame we're on. Got there in the end. And so we can, don't know how best to arrange all of this. This will probably end up being in functions and organized accordingly, but we'll keep throwing it together for the time being. Almost there anyway. So on every frame, and add to it. Oops. And set it. New. So I don't know what happens when it goes over the top of the frames. Yeah, I think like you say, there's no doubt lots of the framework that I can use to do this, and obviously that's definitely where I'm aiming to go. And at the moment I'm kind of piecing it together with the really low level pieces and trying to hope that it works, but hopefully over time, as I say, I'll do a lot of the kind of in-between research at other times to try and understand how to better do things moving forwards. We're going to make it turn less frequently and change frame more often. And we forgot to loop it, that's where that went wrong really. position in frames doesn't seem to return me anything different. Always 0. Is that because messed up where the camera's facing now? I can't even see my person. There we go. Position, if that's what we want instead. Oh no, we don't want that, that's the seconds. Play from the start, reverse, set looping, set new time. Yes, a couple of frame based things there which might be useful. Well, that's obviously a problem. We're setting the frame here to 0 and we are trying to implement it here. That's not smart. That's never going to work. Yeah, I'm going to have to deal with that a different way. Should be changing direction every 50. That comes into here and sets the direction. The direction's not changing the frame anymore, so that's no point. But we are just iterating through them every half a second. The play speed of this was 8 frames per second. And there's 2. So I think that the time is about right there. It's just going all over the place. Thought that slow it down. Maybe it's because the animation is playing. I don't want that. Unfinished play. A couple of events there. Stop him moving around all over the place. Okay, that's a good start. He's not going to be moving himself. Okay, so that's annoyingly slow, but okay, maybe faster than that. Just trial and error. Get the frame rate back right. Okay, as soon as it goes up to 15, it just blocks. Well, as soon as it goes beyond 15, it's always 15. So end. Okay, I guess we just need the length. I think we need to yeah, okay, so I'd assume that you would be able to create multiple animations within one actor, so then you would use the 4 animations, and rather than trying to make the animation play between a range of the frames for that direction, you'd simply choose which animation to show depending on the direction. I agree, that probably would be a little easier. I don't know what properties this has for range handling. Yeah, because then all I'd have to do is show the appropriate animation, move the position of the actor based on the appropriate movement speed for however fast we define the animation to be. It does seem like that would make more sense, because yes, I'm going to be re-implementing all the details of how that animation works. And then just based on the direction, I'd just show one of those animations. Well, I think this has been a good learning experiment. I think I'm going to call it a night at the moment, and I'll come back to this tomorrow. But since I've made a mess out of bashing up the animation. I think now's a good time to stop for the day. I think once I get more familiar with the process, and obviously if further into the detail of I suppose the bits that I probably find a little easier, then I may go on for longer, but trying to get this animation has worn me out. But I'll definitely do some research tomorrow to see whether, as suggested, creating individual flip books for each direction would be better than creating one flip book for the whole set and then kind of digging through the animation. I think I don't know how much individual logic any given character type would have. I mean, obviously, the original game, all the characters, all the people, the units, whatever you want to call them, they all kind of function the same. So, if we were to have individual flip books for each direction for each unit, we'd end up with a lot of flip books. Whereas the logic required to make one flip book work correctly would be duplicated across all of the different, or would be included in some way in each of the different types of animations or different types of actors. But then again, we could argue that rather than having a blueprint for the stone men and a blueprint for the next one and the next one, it would be inherited from anyway. So however the logic works, it really comes down to what kind of unique properties a given character needs, and perhaps the components of the actors can be dynamically added as well based on some kind of data table or whatnot to tie things together, so we don't actually have individual blueprints for each individual type. It's definitely something to think about over the coming days. So yeah, for anybody else that watched, and particularly to that partly atomic for the help you gave, very useful, and I look forward to doing some more soon. But for now, I'll call it, and good night to everybody.